morning, y'alls. I don't really see any less traffic, to be honest with you. It's pretty normal, pretty regular traffic. I want to comment a little bit on the state of the union. Just a little bit. Trump is talking about an invisible foe, right? He's talking about an invisible enemy. And I feel like he probably is talking about the mind virus. That's the actual elephant. We didn't even talk about that yesterday, but the mind virus, or Wetiko, that's the actual, quote, enemy. And it's not even an enemy. But society has grown up with that thing as a thorn up inside, and it's invisible, right? I mean, it's such that it can't really be discussed unless you are immune to it. If you're not immune to it, then you're getting eaten by it. It's just one of the two. If you're aware of it and you're not immune to it, you're getting eaten by it. And you don't get immune to it unless you've been exposed to that thing for a really long time, or a split second, depending on perspective. But that's the only That's why the world looks so insane, because the mind virus is invisible. And people who are being affected or afflicted by it don't show really any outward signs of it. Because what it's doing is it's turning upside down their entire inner perspective. So what looks like regular emotions, if they're doing something with the hand or even thoughts, it all becomes internally fragmented and either sped up or slowed down for their perception, to where the self is not in charge anymore of almost any of it, in the same way that we are when we're fully aware and fully seated, right? So because it's so hard to detect, it's invisible anyway. There's not any thing to look for physically. And then in addition to that, the symptoms that are displayed are not you can blame anything on other stuff that we already have. You can blame things on schizophrenia, paranoia, MPD, greed. I mean, you could blame a lot of the sort of top politicians' actions just on greed alone, right? So the mind virus thing is very, very difficult to detect. Even if we know about it, I know about it, I'm very familiar with it, and even with my familiarity, it's hard for me to detect. I can't detect it. It's not something that you can single out in an individual. It doesn't work like that. It's like an energetic frequency that just sweeps through the whole world. Very difficult to pin down. But that's the reason, in my opinion, why everything looks so insane And I was telling Andrea last night, the state of affairs in the external is normal for me because I went through that gauntlet. I went through the mind virus gauntlet, and I got exposed to all of these clouds of paradoxical opposing thought forms, and in all of the, can't describe it. It's horrifying and sort of beautiful at the same time, but mostly horrifying. But if you do make it out with your mind not fully fractured, then your mind is highly enhanced. But it's difficult to pin down, like I said before, and it's difficult to talk about. It's not difficult to say words about it. It's difficult to have the words that are coming out of your mouth be even close in correctly representing the thing that I'm trying to talk about. Difficult. But I don't see any other way to describe the insanity that we're seeing play out on the world political stage. I don't see any other way to explain that. You can explain one false flag. You can explain 2 or 3 or 4, but you can't explain endless amounts. And I don't go do the math thing because I don't see any point to it. Clearly, this realm is in a vice grip of something, and I think it's in the vice grip of the mind virus. I think it's quite obvious. And you could say entrainment is the grips. Entrainment is the vice grips that the mind virus uses. Everyone's entrained to one thing or another. And the only way away from that thing, the only way to get out of its grip is to not be predictable. I've said this many times as well. And you have to go dive deep inside of your own self and find where things are moving and where they aren't moving, and where is the impetus to action originating from, and make sure you're encrypting correctly, or the thoughts have to be quiet, etc. There are many things that have to be done in order to not fall into that prison. But I think once you've gone through it, you can't do it again, or it doesn't work the same. You're not as susceptible. It's like becoming immune to a virus. So it is a virus. It's the mind virus. But you have conscious defenses to it if you made through the first round. And if you didn't make it through the first round, well, then you're just an NPC, and all of your spirit/soul stuffs have been stolen by whatever. Maybe the mind virus is just the Ouroboros. I don't know if there's some place that has been hoarding up life experience tokens, like how Matt says, and they just have like a big old palace full of gold. I don't know. Maybe that's what the Vatican is/was. It is some sort of theft, but I don't know what can be done with that sort of thing. I know, like Chris Gio was saying, that these things are traded kind of like on the higher dimensional black market. You know, you can buy a bottle of sexual energy, or you can buy a spiritual bottle of adrenochrome. You can buy some fear or whatever. You know, if you're a being that eats etheric discharges from humans, then you can tie the thing together pretty easily internally, or via your own mind. So that's what I think is happening, and that's that the mind virus has everybody. And like I said earlier, the only escape from that is to dive deep within the core of your own self, because it can only reach so far. It actually is showing you what you actually, who you actually are, because the thing can obviously take the personality and bind that one up quite easily and simply, and then you dive further and further. And if you get toward the core of yourself, it can only go so far. The mind virus can only put the tendrils so far. And then once you get deep enough in your own self, then it's not there anymore, and you have peace and silence and tranquility once again. It can take a really long time, but you will eventually reach it. So the world doesn't appear insane to me, because to me, all concepts are false. None of them are correct in representing what they're trying to represent. And that's, of course, just another Buddhist tenet. It's a Far East interpretation of concepts. And again, you can't talk about it. And there are all sorts of paradoxes and oppositions and redundancies inside of the language when you try to speak about what we know of as truth. It just doesn't work. But you can get a little bit of a grasp around where the thing is trying to point. And it will look like insanity until, enough of the population has come to terms with their own selves. That's all that this is about, is people have to come to terms with the truth of themselves. The persona itself is an exercise in running from the self. And if you've been living as if that's the truth, or if that's your own personal truth for a really long time, to come out of that illusion is going to be painful. And we're kind of seeing the entire world being faced with the option of coming out of the illusion. And this particular illusion being the one that the economy is something, what we know of as real, and it's not. So the house of cards is tumbling down. Even if they rebuild it, people will be able to see, well, the whole thing was crashed in around a month with seemingly no virus, and we ran out of toilet paper. You just see that it's not built on anything, and you could sway the whole thing with just have your media people, spew out a bunch of nonsense, and people stop working. If that's not showing the house of cards, I don't know what it is. I gotta go. Take care of yourselves. All right? Peace.